Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving headfirst into the visceral, pounding evolution of electronic music. We're going to trace a wild journey that kicks off in illegal underground warehouse raves and muddy fields, and somehow, against all odds, ends up on massive modern festival stages, and get this, even on Netflix. It's a completely fascinating story about sound, for sure, but honestly, it's really a story about rebellion, culture, and absolute transformation. Let's get right into it. So here's our roadmap for today. First, the sound of rebellion. 2, DIY culture and technovals. 3, the Frenchcore evolution. And finally 4, underground to mainstream. Okay, part 1. The sound of rebellion. Deconstructing the techno beat. Now, a quick note on the name. Techno, in this context, is deliberately spelled with a K. Well, this is a fast, hard-edged offshoot of the European Free Party movement, and that K is absolutely not a typo. It acts as this fierce, very intentional signal of cultural separation from the polished, mainstream club techno scene. So it's literally a visual rebellion before you even hear a single beat drop. You can really hear what makes this sound so unique when you compare it to a heavy hitter like Gabber. Now, Gabber, which came out of the Netherlands, is super famous for an ultra-clipped maximalist sound, just a highly distorted sonic assault. But free techno takes a completely different path. It's got this rounded, rolling pulse. The bass drum distortion is actually dialed way back. Why? Well, it creates this continuous hypnotic rhythm rather than just a constant sonic attack. So how do you actually build that hypnotic effect? Well, first you're going to want to set your tempo somewhere between 150 and 185 beats per minute. Then lock in a strict 4-on-the-floor rhythm with a really punchy kick. You build your groove using rolling offbeat hats and shuffled notes, but you keep the harmony incredibly minimal. We're talking maybe just some short rave stabs or minor mode drones. But here is the absolute most crucial part. This music is mixed specifically for loud, outdoor, highly durable sound systems. This isn't music optimized for your expensive noise-canceling headphones, It's relentless, durable music designed strictly to keep people dancing for hours on end out in an open field. Moving on to part 2, DIY culture and technovals, the anarchist ethos. Geographically speaking, this movement has quite the backstory. It emerged in the UK free party circuits back in the early 90s, championed by legendary sound systems like Spiral Tribe. But then everything abruptly shifted in 1994. The UK government passed the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act, which essentially cracked down heavily on unlicensed gatherings playing, quote, repetitive beats. But rather than killing the movement, this act inadvertently acted like throwing gasoline on a fire. Entire sound systems simply packed up their rigs and moved to continental Europe. By the 2000s, we see massive expansion through these enormous gatherings known as technovals in France and huge events like Czech Tech. And while the 2010s brought digital production into the mix through digital audio workstations, the culture stubbornly and defiantly remained anchored to its free party roots. The difference between this subculture and the mainstream is literally night and day. Mainstream clubs operate in licensed venues with regulated, polished infrastructure. Free techno? We're talking abandoned warehouses, squats, and deep forests. The whole setup is entirely DIY, and crucially, these events were often completely illegal. The organizers actually viewed these spaces as temporary autonomous zones, these fleeting spaces of total freedom operating entirely outside societal norms. But of course, operating that far outside the law meant these squat parties occasionally led to some pretty significant clashes with police, which was notably the case at festivals like Czech Tech in the mid-2000s. And this anti-commercial ethos extended right down to the producers themselves. There's this great quote from the scene that goes, "Artists often use many pseudonyms. They do not see it as their own material, but as something that belongs to the fans and the community." Think about how radical that is for the music industry. In a space that is so often built entirely on ego, branding, and record sales, this movement was built on a fierce anti-profit ideology. It was a total dedication to returning to the roots of the community rather than chasing mainstream success. Okay, part 3, the Frenchcore evolution. Faster, harder, louder. Enter Frenchcore. Pioneered around 1992 by the act Micropoint, which included DJ Radium and Alcor, Frenchcore is really distinguished by 2 defining elements: an extremely fast tempo and a loud, distorted, offbeat bass line. DJ Radium really became the most significant contributor to this sound in the late 90s, founding labels like Psychic Genocide. What he did was completely transform that rolling techno sound by adding this massive, incredibly aggressive offbeat bass punch, a real game changer. And the sheer speed we are talking about here is just staggering. I mean, mainstream techno usually hums along at a comfortable 125 beats per minute, right? We already know free techno cranks that up to a relentless 170. But Frenchcore? Oh man, it absolutely shatters the speedometer, regularly hitting 200 beats per minute. Just think about that. The physical intensity and sheer stamina required to dance to a 200 BPM rhythm for hours on end is just, it's mind-blowing. But it actually wasn't just about pure speed. The sound itself evolved dramatically over the decades. Back in the 1990s, Frenchcore relied heavily on gritty, raw industrial loops and percussion. Then by the 2000s, artists like the Speed Freak started integrating melodic and psychedelic influences pulled from trance and UK hardcore. And by the 2010s, the genre became incredibly sophisticated. It adopted pitched kicks, harmonic bass lines, and even advanced time signatures like 3/4 or 5/8, pulling heavy inspiration straight from classical music of all places. Which brings us to part 4, underground to mainstream, euphoric Frenchcore and commercial success. So the major catalyst for this genre-bending shift into the mainstream was the rise of what became known as euphoric Frenchcore in the 2010s. The epicenter actually moved from France over to the Netherlands. This whole wave was spearheaded by artists like Dr. Peacock and later his young protege, Safa. Amazingly, they took this ultra-aggressive underground sound and introduced a deeply melodic, harmonic structure to it. They even started performing with live musicians, like actual pianists and violinists, right up there alongside their DJ gear. This new, highly accessible approach started attracting absolutely massive crowds of mainstream hardstyle fans. The mainstream trajectory here is just undeniable. By 2014, DEFCON 1, which is the world's largest hardstyle festival, added a dedicated Frenchcore stage. Then in 2018, Safa's album Levin is Leiden just exploded, elevating him straight to major festival main stages. That very same year, Dr. Peacock became the first Frenchcore act to ever close out the massive indoor event Culamax. And fast forward to 2020, a Culamax film featuring a Frenchcore section produced by Safa actually landed on Netflix. I mean, wow. A sound born in illegal, squatted warehouses was now streaming directly into millions of living rooms worldwide. But did it lose its edge entirely in that process? Well, not necessarily. During the 2021 Unmute Us protests in the Netherlands, where citizens marched against the government's COVID-19 entertainment sector restrictions, artists like Safa played full Frenchcore sets to staggering crowds of 70,000 people. It really proved that, despite its massive commercial success, this music is still a very potent, thundering soundtrack for protest and rebellion. All of this brings us to a lingering, really fascinating paradox. Can a genre born out of illegal raves, temporary autonomous zones, and strict anti-commercialism truly keep its original soul when it's headlining a massive commercial festival stage? It's a delicate balance between subcultural purity and mainstream evolution, proving that music is this living organism, constantly finding new ways to adapt, evolve, and make us move. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this deep dive gave you a whole new appreciation for the pulse of the underground. See you next time.